Hey guys, it's Jakov, and I'm here with a new video, this one ranking all the Axe Infantry in Total War Rise of Mordor. If you're new to the channel, Rise of Mordor is a mod for the game Total War Attila, overhauling it and basing it off of the world of Lord of the Rings. Today, I'm going to be going through every unit of Axe Infantry in the game. Axe Infantry being a type of unit who, as the name suggests, use axes as their weapon, being somewhat of a cross between melee infantry and shock infantry, combining most of the durability of melee infantry with an increased prowess on the offensive, although not to the degree of shock infantry wielding two-handed weapons. To make this ranking, I'll be using the unit's pricing, availability and abilities to determine their positions. As of the most recent version of the mod, 0.6.0, the mod has 12 Axe Infantry units spread across its factions. However, 2 of these units are practically identical, but despite this, they will be ranked separately due to other factors in the mod. Before we get into the rankings, I want to make it clear that this video is extremely subjective, and that all rankings are my own personal opinion, so if the rankings don't match your own, don't feel slighted. Instead, I ask you to tell me your opinions in the comments, as I would really love to hear what you think. With all that out of the way, let's get into our rankings, starting with the unfortunate winner of last place, the Hillmen of Lamedon. This Gondorian Bronze Tier 1 Light Axe Infantry unit is at the bottom of the list for 2 main reasons: its limit on recruitment per army and its pricing, which is more expensive than its contemporaries despite having roughly the same performance across all stats. The real nail in this unit's coffin, however, is the first point: its restrictions to a max of 3 units per army due to its status as a fiefdom unit of Gondor, meaning that the unit can't be amassed in large numbers similar to every other Bronze Tier Axe unit, severely limiting the impact and flexibility of the unit on the battlefield. Combined with that limitation is the fact that the faction has a lot of other starting infantry units that are a lot more reliable when it comes to recruitment, meaning that the faction doesn't have to rely on these particular axemen the way other factions do, leaving this unit at the end of the day with no real definable role or position. It's for all these reasons that the Hillmen of Lamedon find themselves in last place. Ranking higher than the Hillmen of Lamedon, but still not being capable of cracking to the top 10, are the Dunland Tribesmen. This unit is special in that it and the Tribal Warriors are almost the exact same unit, the only difference between the two being that the Dunland Tribesmen have slightly less morale and a limited max of 3 units per army, being mercenaries from Dunland in the service of Isengard, which is why they're so similar to their Dunland roster equivalent. This unit of Bronze Tier 1 very light Axe Infantry do share the same limitations as the previous unit. However, because in the current state of the mod the Isengard roster is limited when it comes to beginning units, or their Bronze Tier units sharing the same 3 unit limitation, it becomes imperative that this unit be used at full strength to boost the number of units that can be fielded, this being true both for the inevitable campaign but also in multiplayer games with a focus on early game units. One thing that does give the unit some usefulness is its Raider trait, meaning that it can burn nearby buildings, something that can be quite useful in sieges as a way of lowering enemy stats such as combat effectiveness and morale, although the faction has far better units with the same ability who don't have recruitment restrictions. Overall, it's a fairly mediocre unit with barely any saving graces, only really being useful by dint of game design. Entering the top 10 but also technically being third last are the Mansion Reclaimers of Erebor. These Gold Tier 4 very heavy Axe Infantry are an excellent unit, however they don't really have a meaningful role that's not fulfilled by other units. While they are incredibly devastating and incredibly tough, beating every other unit in almost every statistic by a large margin, especially when in their almost unbreakable shield wall, to the point that the unit is one of the leading general options for the Erebor faction, the unit does have flaws that hold it up. Its price for starters is considerable, easily being the most expensive unit in this video, while it has the toughest restrictions of any of the units as well, having a max strength of 1 per army. This is as restrictive as selecting unique heroes to be your generals, being far tougher than the limits on the bulk of Tier 4 units, which all to my knowledge have a limit of 3 per army or less. Well, you'd never be able to amass this unit if you were a standard Tier 4 unit. With only one being allowed in an army at a time, it means that you have a unit that's a nice addition to your army as some extra muscle or as a general, but apart from that the unit is quite restricted in what it can do, essentially becoming a white elephant for all intents and purposes. An absolutely amazing unit and one which delivers results whenever it's deployed, but one which is let down by the extreme restrictions placed upon it. Taking 9th position and edging out the Mansion Reclaimers are a unit that couldn't be any more different from them, the Mustard Axes of Rohan. This unit of Bronze Tier 1 Light Axe Infantry unit is here because apart from this being a generally good starting axe unit, the faction it finds itself in lacks starting melee infantry, meaning that this unit must suffice as the core of Rohan's offensive infantry early on, something it does quite well. It's because of this general usefulness and defined role within the unit roster that the Mustard Axes take this position, although there are other units that outperform them. One of those units that finds itself outperforming the mustard axes are the Axe Thanes of Rohan, who claim 8th position. These silver tier 2 medium axe infantry are quite the unit, being the upgraded version of the previous unit and putting in a very solid performance on the battlefield due to their stats, being capable of forming a hardy shield wall and fighting in formation, unlike some other units in the ranking. Apart from their prowess on the battlefield, the main reason why this unit takes its position is due to the way that axe infantry play, and what that means for Rohan players. As I said early on in the video, axe infantry acquires the shock infantry being a line of units that Rohan completely lacks. This means that this unit is crucial to the Rohan roster, giving it extra attacking power not only on the open battlefield, but critically in sieges where this unit is more effective in breaking enemy holdouts than the regular melee infantry that Rohan has access to. Overall, a unit that packs quite the punch and provides Rohan with good infantry options, something that all good units should do to some degree. Coming in at 7th position are the tribal warriors of the Dunlandings. This bronze tier 1 light axe infantry are, as I said before, almost identical to the Dunland tribesmen, except for their raised morale and the fact that they have no limit on recruitment. This means that the unit is capable of being used en masse to swarm enemies with numbers, a fairly viable strategy for the faction. This, combined with the fact that it's a crucial component of early game Dunlanding armies due to the lack of starting melee infantry, means that this unit will always be very useful, something that can't be said for the units that it trumped to get this high. Taking into account their raider ability as well and its usefulness in sieges, this unit is more deserving of this position. Making it all the way to the 6th spot in the video and just making it into the top half of all the units are the Easterling's clan Axemen. This bronze tier 1 light axe infantry unit is unique compared to all the other units being looked at today in that it has skirmish capabilities, having 2 volleys of javelins at its disposal that it can use to weaken enemy formations before getting stuck in them with their axes. Stats wise, it's fairly equal with all the other starter axe infantry, but that skirmishing power gives it that slight edge, made all the more useful by the fact that because the Easterlings now entirely lack melee infantry, this unit is an early game staple similar to the tribal warriors and mustard axes. A useful unit at the end of the day, even if it is overshadowed by the following units. One of those units that overshadows the clan Axemen and makes it into the top 5 is its improvement in the roster, the Runic Warriors. Silver tier 2 light axe infantry. These Easterling units are the well-balanced clan Axemen but with boosted stats, making for a hardier unit and allowing them to fight toe-to-toe with tougher enemies, while still being capable of being used en masse, giving the faction a mainline unit that combos well with the various shock infantry units that the Easterlings have. This unit will serve as the core of mid-game armies and will do well even in supporting infantry and late-tier armies, doing exactly the same in multiplayer games too, just generally being a good card to have up your sleeve, even if other units do overpower it considerably. Making it to the top 5, but just missing out on the top 3, are the Goblin Scrappers of the Goblin faction. These bronze tier 1 light axe infantry are surprisingly competent troops, being very useful infantry who for their price are quite good, a great combination of numbers and limited skill at an early stage in the game. Within their faction roster, these troops serve in a shock infantry role in the early game, not necessarily being quite as crucial as other units in the video, but still helping give the goblins additional strength that is very much appreciated. Claiming the bronze prize when it comes to axe infantry are the Loke-Rim Macemen of the Easterling faction, a unit who is quite unique compared to the rest of the units in this video. For starters, the unit doesn't actually use axes but instead uses maces, a far more effective weapon against armoured foes than axes. That however is nothing compared to the unit's status as a new addition to the game's axe infantry, as up until the last update, the Loke-Rim Macemen were the sole melee infantry unit that Easterlings had access to, which is why they were in my melee unit ranking video where they took 2nd place, a position that's now invalid. However, testament to their good quality, the unit is able to retain the bronze medal here, showing off just how useful professional silver tier 3 heavy axe infantry can be. As the Easterlings do lack melee infantry, these warriors are forced to take up that role in the late game and in elite armies. However, due to their great stat line, they're more than capable of fulfilling that role. Funnily enough, they aren't quite as durable against ranged attacks the way their weaker counterparts in the Easterling roster are. However, to be fair, they make up for that with their enhanced stats in every other department. Overall, just a fantastic unit with an amazing design to top it off. Edging out the Loke-Rim Macemen for the silver medal are their Erebor equivalent, the Erebor Axe Warriors. These silver tier 3 medium axe infantry are what I would call the epitome of professionalism when it comes to axe infantry, being as high tiered as possible without having any unit restrictions, a positive aspect that the previous unit shares too. Similar to the low-cav macemen, the Erebor Axe Warriors serve as professional infantry for late game and high tier armies, being the bulk of your forces. However, this unit has the advantage not only because its stats are better for a marginal price increase, but also because the Erebor roster as it stands is more fleshed out than the Easterlings. You have more choice in how to use this unit rather than being boxed into a playstyle. Looking at the unit as a whole, it does everything right. However, there is one unit that does eclipse it. Taking the gold medal for their own, the Knight Raiders stand supreme in this ranking. The Knight Raiders of the Goblins might seem like an odd choice to be considered the best axe infantry in the mod, but I do have my reasons for their selection. As a silver tier 2 light axe infantry unit, they are inferior to the previous two units in terms of combat prowess as is to be expected. However, their sheer usefulness makes them more than a match for all competitors. Getting into their stats, for their price point, these are the most cost-effective axes in the game, having stats closer to tier 3 infantry while retaining cheap prices, allowing for a unit that can be used to swarm enemies while still individually retaining a lot of hitting power. Within their own roster, similar to the axe lanes of the Rohirrim, the Knight Raiders serve as fill-ins for the shock infantry role. However, unlike the Rohirrim, the Goblins actually do have unlockable shock infantry, meaning that once they gain access to them, this unit doesn't have to bear the burden of that role alone, allowing it to be a support unit that builds upon the prowess of shock infantry, while also serving as proper axe infantry. It's this versatility as a unit combined with its general great performance for cost that leads me to consider this unit the best axe infantry in the mod, at least as of this most recent update. So there we are people, all the axe infantry in the mod ranked. As I said in the beginning, these rankings are subjective, so if they don't match yours, don't feel bad, but instead let me know your opinions in the comments, as I love interacting with you guys, especially as it gives me insights into things that I may have missed. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It may not seem like much, but for such a small channel, it's greatly appreciated. Just to let you guys know, at the end of this video, I'm going to have all the stats of the different units compared in charts. So that's just a little something extra for you guys. This is your host, Jakov, signing out.